Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Paragamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raganatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Rana Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishakam Vidam Sya Om Ajnana Timrandasya Gyanajana Shalakya Chakshurunmitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gorva Bhistam Supurakam Guruganarasisha Sambhushitam Chintya Samasta Veda Nipunam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govindabhidam Ujwalam Bharatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Bande Vishwagurun Shad Divyat Bhagavat Prem Noe Bija Pranam Devam Divyatanum Suchanavaranam Balarka Shailanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadikavaranam Vairagya Vidyam Buddhim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Bandetam Shubharam Madeka Sharanam Yashishwara Shridharam Vanshakopatarubyasya Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavenibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gorata Vishay Namah. So we're reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad. This is Madhya-lila chapter 8, that talks between the Lord and Sri Ramananda Raya. 187. Verse number 187. Or I'll do 186. Okay. Verse number 186. Prabhu ko hai janilun Krishna Radha prema tatva shunite chohiya duhara bilasa mahatva. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "Now I have come to understand the truth of the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. Nonetheless, I still want to hear how both of them gloriously enjoy such love. Raya ko hai Krishna hoy dira lalita nirantara kamakrita jahara charita." Rai Ramananda replied, "Lord Krishna is dira lalita, for he can always keep his girlfriends in a subjugated state. Thus his only business is enjoying sense gratification." So Krishna's only business is enjoying. All other expansions of the Lord, they're doing some job. But Krishna's business is to enjoy. He's the supreme enjoyer. And all living entities are meant to help and serve in Krishna's enjoyment, especially between Radha and Krishna, and we will become so exalted if we do so. Vidagnanavat tarunya parihasa visharadaha nischinto diralalita shatpraya prayasi vashaha. A person who is very cunning and always youthful, expert in joking and without anxiety, and who can keep his girlfriends always subjugated, is called Dira Lalita. So, a person who is very cunning and always youthful, expert in joking and without anxiety, and who can keep his girlfriends always subjugated, is called Dira Lalita. Ratri Dina Kunje Krida Kore Rara Sange Kaishora Mayasa Safala Koila Krida Range. Day and night, Lord Sri Krishna enjoys the company of Srimati Radharani in the bushes of Vrindavan. Thus his pre-youthful age is fulfilled through his affairs was Srimati Radharani. Vacha Suchita Karvari Rati Kala Pragobhyaya Radhikam Vacha Suchita Sharvari Rati Kala Pragobhyaya Radhikam Krida Kunchita Lochanam Virachayan Agre Sakinam Aso Tad Vakshoruha Chitra Keli Makari Panditya Paramgata Kaishoram Sapali Karoti Kalayan Kunje Viharam Hari. Thus, Sri Krishna spoke of his activities of the previous night. In this way, he made Srimati Radharani close her eyes out of shyness. Taking this opportunity, Krishna painted various types of dolphins on her breast. Thus he became a very expert artist for all the gopis. During such pastimes, Krishna enjoyed the fulfillment of his youth. Prabhu ko he eho hoy age ko ho a raya ko he iha bai buri gati nahi. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "This is all right, but please continue." At that time, Ramananda Raya replied, "I don't think my intelligence goes beyond this." Jeva prema vilasa vivarta ek hoy taha shuni tomara shuka hoy kina hoy. Rai Ramananda then informed Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that there was another topic known as prema vilasa vivarta. "You may hear of this from me," Ramananda Raya said, "but I do not know whether you will be happy with it or not." Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These statements are set forth for our understanding according to Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur in his Amrita Pravaha Bhasha. In essence, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Ramananda Roy, "My dear Ramananda, the explanation you have given about the goal of life and the pastimes of Srimati Radharani and Krishna is certainly the truth. Although this is factual, you can continue telling me more if there is anything more to say." In reply, Ramananda Roy said, "I do not think I have anything to say beyond this, but there is a topic known as Prema Vilasa Vivarta, which I may explain to you. I do not know whether it will bring you happiness or not." Etaboli apana krita gita ekdahila premi prabhu swahaste taramuka acharila. Saying this, Ramananda Roy began to sing a song he had composed, but Mahaprabhu, out of the ecstasy of love of Godhead, immediately covered Ramananda's mouth with his own hand. The topics that are about to be discussed between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Raya cannot be understood by a materialistic poet, nor by intelligence or material perception. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur states that the spiritual rasa can be realized only when one is situated on the transcendental platform beyond the material stage of goodness. That platform is called Vishuddha Sattva, Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam. Realization of the Vishuddha Sattva platform is beyond the pale of the material world and is not perceived by bodily senses or mental speculation. Our identification with the gross body and subtle mind is different from spiritual understanding, since the intelligence and mind are material. The loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are beyond their perception. Sarvopadi vinir muktam tatparat vena nirmalam. When we are free from all material designations and our senses are completely purified by the bhakti process, we can understand the sense activities of the absolute truth. Rishikena sevanam bhaktir uchate. The spiritual senses are beyond the material senses. A materialist can think only of the negation of material variety. He cannot understand spiritual variety. He thinks that spiritual variety simply contradicts material variety and is a negation or void. But such conceptions cannot even reach the precincts of spiritual realization. The wonderful activities of the gross body and subtle mind are always imperfect. They are below the degree of spiritual understanding and are ephemeral. The spiritual mellow is eternally wonderful and is described as Purna, Shuddha, Nitya Mukta. That is complete, perfectly pure, and eternally liberated from all material conceptions. When we are unable to fulfill our material desires, there is certainly sorrow and confusion. This may be described as vivarta. But in spiritual life, there is no sorrow, inebriety, or imperfection. Srila Ramananda Raya was expert in realizing the spiritual activities of Srimati Radharani and Krishna. And Ramananda's spiritual experience was placed before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as he inquired whether the Lord approved his realization of spiritual truth. There are 3 books prominent in this connection. One was written by Bhaktidas Bal and is called Vivarta Vilas. Another was compiled by Jagannananda Pandit and is called Prema Vivarta. Sri Ramananda Roy's book is called Prema Vilasa Vivarta. The Vivarta Vilas by Bhaktidas Bal is completely different from the other 2 books. Sometimes a university student or professor tries to study these transcendental literatures and attempts to put forth a critical analysis from the mundane view, with an end to receiving degrees like a PhD. Such realization is certainly different from that of Ramananda Roy. If one actually wants to take a PhD degree from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and be approved by Ramananda Roy, he must first become free from all material designations. Sarvopadi vinir muktam tatparat vena nirmalam. A person who identifies with his material body cannot understand these talks between Sri Ramananda Roy and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Man-made religious scriptures and transcendental philosophical talks are quite different. Indeed, there is a gulf of difference between the two. Difference between man-made religious scriptures and transcendental philosophical talks. Indeed, there is a gulf of difference between the two. This subject matter has been very diligently described by Sriman Madhvacharya. Some material philosophers are situated in the material conception of life. Since material philosophers are situated in the material conception of life, they are unable to realize the spiritual prema vilasa vivarta. They cannot accommodate an elephant upon a dish. Similarly, mundane speculators cannot capture the spiritual elephant within their limited conception. It is just like a frog trying to measure the Atlantic Ocean by imagining it so many times larger than his will. Materialistic philosophers And Sahajiyas cannot understand the talks between Ramananda Raya and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu concerning the pastimes of Sri Radha and Krishna. The only tendency of the impersonalist or the Prakrita Sahajiyas is to face the platform of impersonalism. They cannot understand spiritual variegatedness. Consequently, when Ramananda Roy attempted to sing his own verses, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stopped him by covering his mouth with his own hand. So this is what Ramananda Roy is singing. Pahile hi raga nayana bange bela anudina bandala abadina gela naso ramana nahama ramani duhumana manobhava peshala jani esaki sesava prema kahini kanutame kahabi vichorala jani na konjalun duti na konjalu an duhu kere milane madhya ta panchaban absohi viraga tuhu beliduti supuruka premaki ajnariti. Alas, before we met, there was an initial attachment between us brought about by an exchange of glances. In this way, attachment evolved. That attachment has gradually grown, and there's no limit to it. Now that attachment has become a natural sequence between ourselves. It is not that it is due to Krishna the enjoyer, nor is it due to me, for I am the enjoyed. It is not like that. This attachment was made possible by mutual meeting. This mutual exchange of attraction is known as Manobhava or Cupid. Krishna's mind and my mind have merged together. Now, during this time of separation, it is very difficult to explain these loving affairs. My dear friend, though Krishna might have forgotten all these things, you can understand and bring this message to him. But during our first meeting, there was no messenger between us, nor did I request anyone to see him. Indeed, Cupid's 5 arrows are via media. Now, during this separation, that attraction has increased to another ecstatic state. My dear friend, please act as a messenger on my behalf, because if one is in love with a beautiful person, this is the consequence. These verses were originally composed and sung by Ramananda Roy himself. Srila Bhaktivedanta suggests that during the time of conjugal enjoyment, the attachments might be compared to Cupid himself. However, during the period of separation, Cupid becomes a messenger of highly elevated love. This is called Prema Vilasa Vivarta. When there is separation, conjugal enjoyment itself acts like a messenger, and that messenger was addressed by Srimati Radharani as a friend. The essence of this transaction is that transcendental loving affairs are as relishable during separation as during conjugal enjoyment. When Srimati Radharani was fully absorbed in love of Krishna, she mistook a black tamal tree for Krishna and embraced it. Such a mistake is called Prema Vilasa Vivarta. Radhaya Bhavatas Cha Chitta Cha Jatuni Svedar Vilapya Kramad Yunjan Adri Nikunja Kunjarapate Nirduta Beda Brahmam Chitraya Svayam Anvaranjayad Iha Brahmanda Harmyodare Buyabir Nava Raga Hingula Marai Shringara Karu Kriti. O my Lord, you live in the forest of Govardhan Hill, and like the king of elephants, you are expert in the art of conjugal love. O Master of the universe, your heart and Srimati Radharani's heart are just like shellac and are now melted in your spiritual perspiration. Therefore, one can no longer distinguish between you and Srimati Radharani. Now you have mixed your newly invoked affection, which is like vermilion, with your melted hearts, and for that benefit of the whole world, you have painted both your hearts red within this great palace of the universe. Prabhu kohe sadya bastura abadi ahoy tomara prasade iha janilu nisjoy. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirmed these verses recited by Sri Ramananda Raya, saying, "This is the limit of the goal of human life. Only by your mercy have I come to understand it conclusively." Sadhyabastu sarana binu kehonahi pai kripa kore kaharai pabara upai. The goal of life cannot be achieved unless one practices the process. Now being merciful upon me, please explain that means by which this goal can be attained. Raya kohe je kahal se kahid bani ki kohiye balo manda kichwena jani. Sri Ramananda Raya replied, "I do not know what I am saying, but you have made me speak what I have spoken, be it good or bad. I am simply repeating that message." Tribhuvana madhyaiche hoy kundira je tomara mayanate hoy beka stira. Within these three worlds, who is so undisturbed that he can remain steady as you manipulate your different energies? Moramuke bhakta tumi haush shrota adyanta rahasya shuna sadanera katam. Actually, you are speaking through my mouth, and at the same time, you are listening. This is very mysterious. Anyway, kindly hear the explanation of the process by which the goal can be attained. Srila Sanatana Goswami has advised us to hear about Krishna from a Vaishnava. He has explicitly forbidden us to hear from an Avaishnava. Avaishnavam Mukod Girnam Putam Hari Katamritam Shravanam Naiva Kartavyam Sarpo Chishtam Yatapayaha. Thus, quoting from Padma Purana, Srila Sanatana Goswami warns that one should not hear anything about Krishna from a Vaishnava, however great a mundane scholar he may be. Milk touched by the lips of a serpent has poisonous effects. Similarly, talks about Krishna given by an Vaishnava are also poisonous. However, because a Vaishnava is surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his talks are spiritually potent. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord says, Tesham sadhata yuktanam bhajatam pratipurvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to worshiping me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. When a pure Vaishnava speaks, he speaks perfectly. How is this? His speech is managed by Krishna himself from within the heart. Srila Ramananda Raya accepts this benediction from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, he admits that whatever he was speaking was not derived from his own intelligence. Rather, everything was coming from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, according to the Bhagavad Gita. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto Mata smritir jnanam pavanam sha vidaischa sarvairaham eva vedyo vedanta krid vedavid eva shaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. And intelligence, all intelligence emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul, within the heart of everyone. Non-devotees want to ask the Supreme Lord for sense gratification. Therefore, non-devotees come under the influence of Maya, the illusory energy. A devotee, however, is directed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and comes under the influence of Yogamaya. Consequently, there is a gulf of difference between statements made by a devotee and those made by a non-devotee. Radha Krishna Lila e Ati Gudatar Dasha Vatsal Jari Babe Nahoy Gochar. The pastimes of Radha and Krishna are very confidential. They cannot be understood through the mellows or rasas of servitude, fraternity, or parental affection. Sabe ek saki ganer ihan adhikar, saki hoite hoy e lila rabistar. Actually, only the gopis have the right to appreciate these transcendental pastimes, and only from them can these pastimes be expanded. Saki bina e lila pushtana hi hoy, saki lila vistariya, saki ashvadoy. Without the gopis, these pastimes between Radha and Krishna cannot be nourished. Only by their cooperation are such pastimes broadcast. It is their business to taste the mellows. Saki bina e lilai anjana nahi gati, saki babe jetare kore anugati, Radha Krishna kunja seva sadya se pai, se sadya paite ar nahika upai. Without the help of the gopis, one cannot enter into these pastimes. Only one who worships the Lord in the ecstasy of the gopis, following in their footsteps, can engage in the service of Shri Radha and Krishna in the bushes of Vrindavan. Only then can one understand the conjugal love between Radha and Krishna. There is no other procedure for understanding. Vibhorapi sukha rupa sva prakashopi bhava shanam api na irara krishnayor yarite swaha prabhati rasa pushtim chid vibhutir ivesha shrayatina param asam ka sakinam rasagya. The pastimes of Sri Radha and Krishna are self-effulgent. They are happiness personified, unlimited and all-powerful. Even so, the spiritual humors of such pastimes are never complete without the gopis, the Lord's personal friends. The Supreme Personality of God is never complete without his spiritual potencies. Therefore, unless one takes shelter of the gopis, one cannot enter into the company of Radha and Krishna. Who can be interested in their spiritual pastimes without taking their shelter? Sakyara svabhavek akatya katan Krishna saha nija lilai nahi sakirman. There is an inexplicable fact about the natural inclination of the gopis. The gopis never want to enjoy themselves with Krishna personally. Krishna saha radhikara lila jaykarai nijasuka hoite tate koti suka pai. The happiness of the gopis increases 10 million times when they serve to engage Sri Radha and Krishna in their transcendental pastimes. Radhara Swarupa Krishna Prema Kopalata Sakigana Hoitara Palava Pushpapata. By nature, Srimati Radharani is just like a creeper of love of Godhead, and the gopis are the twigs, flowers, and leaves of that creeper. Krishna Lilamrita Chari Latake Sinchai Nijasuka Hoite Balavadyara Koti Suka Hoi. When the nectar of Krishna's pastimes is sprinkled on that creeper, the happiness derived by the twigs, flowers, and leaves is 10 million times greater than that derived by the creeper itself. In his Amrita Pravaha Bhashya, Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur states, Srimati Radharani is the creeper of love of Godhead, and the gopis are exactly like twigs, flowers, and leaves. When water is sprinkled on the creeper, the twigs, flowers, and leaves indirectly receive all the benefits of the creeper itself. But water sprinkled directly on the twigs, leaves, and flowers is not as effective as water sprinkled on the creeper's root. The gopis are not pleased when they directly mix with Krishna as when they serve to unite Srimati Radharani with Krishna. Their transcendental pleasure lies in uniting them. Sakya Shri Radhikaya Braja Kumuda Vidor Ladini Nama Shakti Saram Sha Prema Valya Kishaloy Dala Pushpadi Tuya Swat Tuyaha Shiktayam Krishna Lilamrita Rasa Nichayar Ulasantyam Amusham Jatolasha Swasekach Chata Gunam Adikam Shanti Yatan Na Chitram. All the gopis, the personal friends of Srimati Radharani, are equal to her. Krishna is pleasing to the inhabitants of Brajabhumi just as the moon is pleasing to the lotus flower. His pleasure-giving potency is known as Aladini, of which the active principle is Srimati Radharani. She is compared to a creeper with newly grown flowers and leaves. When the nectar of Krishna's pastimes is sprinkled on Srimati Radharani, all her friends, the gopis, immediately appreciate the pleasure 100 times more than if they were sprinkled themselves. Actually, this is not at all wonderful. Jajapi Sakira Krishna Sangame Nahiman Tatapi Radhika Jatne Karana Sangam. Although the gopis, Srimati Radharani's friends, do not desire to enjoy themselves directly with Krishna, Srimati Radharani makes a great endeavor to induce Krishna to enjoy himself with the gopis. Nanachale Krishna Preri Sangama Karai Atma Krishna Sangha Hoite Kote Sukapai. Presenting various pleas for the gopis, Srimati Radharani sometimes sends the gopis to Krishna just to enable them to associate with him directly. At such times, she enjoys a happiness 10 million times greater than that enjoyed through direct association. Anyonye Vishuddha Preme Kore Rasa Pushta Tatsamara Prema Deki Krishna Hoy Tushta. The transcendental mellow is nourished by that mutual behavior in love of Godhead. When Lord Krishna sees how the gopis have developed pure love for him, he becomes very satisfied. Sahaja Gopir Prema Nahi Prakrita Kam Kamakrita Samyetara Kohe Kamanam. It is to be noted that the natural characteristic of the gopis is to love the Supreme Lord. Their lusty desire is not to be compared to material lust. Nonetheless, because their desire sometimes appears to resemble material lust, their transcendental love for Krishna is sometimes described as lust. Well, this is meaning in terms of terminology or an understanding that actually the difference between lust and love is in lust, one wants to satisfy one's own senses, but in love, one wants to satisfy the senses of Krishna. So actually, what the gopis experience is real love, but because it appears to be, you can say, the lusty activities between a boy and girl, sometimes they're called kama or lust, but actually they're not really lust. It's really prema. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur says that material lust should never be attributed to Krishna, who is full of transcendental knowledge. Material lust cannot be engaged in the service of the Lord, for it is applicable to materialists, not to Krishna. Only prema, or love of God, it is applicable for the satisfaction of Krishna. Prema's full service rendered unto the Lord. The lusty affairs of the gopis actually constitute the topmost love of Godhead, because the gopis never act for their own personal satisfaction. They are simply pleased by engaging other gopis in the service of the Lord. The gopis derive more transcendental pleasure from indirectly engaging others in the service of Krishna than from engaging in his service themselves. That is the difference between material lust and love of God. Lust applies to the material world, and love of God, it applies only to Krishna. Premaiva gopa ramanam kama iti agamat pratam iti udabodaya pi etam vanchanti bhagavat priyaha. Although the dealings of the gopis with Krishna are on the platform of pure love of God, and such dealings are sometimes considered to be lusty, but because they are completely spiritual, Uddhava and all the other dearmost devotees to the Lord desire to participate in them. So Uddhava is a perfect devotee. He would not be interested in lusty affairs between men and women, but he is a worshipper of the gopis, so you can understand that he appreciates that, and that is stated by him, which we'll hear. Nichendriya sukha hetu kamera tatparya Krishna sukha tatparya gopi bhavavarya. Lusty desires are experienced when one is concerned with his own personal sense gratification. The mood of the gopis is not like that. Their only desire is to satisfy the senses of Krishna. Nijendriya sukha bansha nahi gopikar Krishna sukha dite kore sangama bihar. Among the gopis there is not a pinch of desire for sense gratification. Their only desire is to give pleasure to Krishna, and this is why they mingle with him and enjoy with him. Tate sujata charanam buruham staneshu bita shanai priya dadimahi karkaseshu tena tavim atasi tad vyatate no kim svid kurpadibir brahmatidir bhavad ayusham naha. All the gopis said, "Dear Krishna, we carefully hold your delicate lotus feet upon our hard breasts. When you walk in the forest, your soft lotus feet are pricked by small bits of stone. We fear that this is paining you. Since you are our life and soul, our minds are very much disturbed when your lotus feet are pained." Say gopi bhavamrite jara loba hoy beda dharma lokatyaji say Krishna majoy. One who is attracted by that ecstatic love of the gopis does not care about popular opinion or the regulative principles of Vedic life. Rather, he completely surrenders unto Krishna and renders service unto him. Raganuga marge tare bhaje jay jan say jan paya braje brajendra nandan. If one worships the Lord on the path of spontaneous love and goes to Vrindavan, one receives the shelter of Brajendra Nandana, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Brajaloke kon baba loya jay banje baba jogya deho paya Krishna pai braje. In his liberated stage, the devotee is attracted by one of the 5 rasas in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As he continues to serve the Lord in that transcendental mood, he attains the spiritual body to serve Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. Tahate Drishtanta Upanishad Shrutigan Ragamarge Bhaje Bhaila Brajendra Nandan. Those saintly persons who represent the Upanishads are vivid examples of this. By worshiping the Lord on the path of spontaneous love, they attain the lotus feet of Brajendra Nandana, the son of Nanda Maharaj. So obviously, as I'm reading these, you can understand these are very high topics, and they may not be so nicely accommodated in our mundane minds or understanding, but we can appreciate hearing about this. Nibritam Marun Manoksha Drida Yogya Yujo Ridinyan Munaya Upasate Tad Arayopi Yayus Smaranad Striya Uragendra Bhoga Bujadanda Vishakta Diyo Vayam Apite Sama Samodrishongri Sarojas Sudaha. Great sages conquer the mind and senses by practicing the mystic yoga system and controlling the breath. Thus engaging in mystic yoga, they see the supersoul within their hearts and ultimately enter into impersonal Brahman. But even the enemies of the Supreme Lord attain that position simply by thinking of him. However, the damsels of Braja, the gopis, being attracted by the beauty of Krishna, simply wanted to embrace him and his arms, which are like serpents. Thus, the gopis ultimately tasted the nectar of the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, the Upanishads can also taste the nectar of his lotus feet by following in the footsteps of the gopis. And we mentioned that Lakshmi, she worshipped the Lord with hard austerities for a long time, but she was not able to enter into the pastimes of the Lord. But the personified Vedas, the Shrutigan, they were able to enter into the pastimes of the Lord because they worshipped in the mood of the gopis, and in a future birth they were able to take birth in Vrindavan and enter into Krishna's pastimes as gopis. Lakshmi couldn't do that because she could not give up her own sense of importance in terms of Aishvarya Gyan. Aishvarya Gyan is the mood of Vaikuntha, and certainly Lakshmi is of that mood where she worships the Lord with awe, reverence, and majesty, and that is not the mood of Vrindavan. So the Shrutigan, the personified Vedas, they had success in entering in Krishna's pastimes, but Lakshmi was not. Samadrisha Shabde Kohe Sebabe Anugati Sama Shabde Kohe Shrutir Gopideho Prapti. The word Shamadrisha, mentioned in the 4th line of the previous verse, means falling in the mood of the gopis. The word Shama means the Shrutis attaining a body like those of the gopis. Angri Padma Shuraya Kohe Krishna Sangananda Vidimarge Napaye Braje Krishna Chandra. The word Angri Padma Shuddha means associating intimately with Krishna. One can attain such perfection only by spontaneous love of Godhead. One cannot obtain Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan simply by serving the Lord according to regulative principles. You can't enter into the Lord's Krishna's worship through Vidyanagar in a mechanical way of following all the rules and regulations. Nayam Sukapo Bhagavan Dehinam Gopika Sutaha Ganinam Shatmabhutanam Yatha Bhakti Matam Miha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, the son of Mother Yashoda, is accessible to those devotees engaged in spontaneous loving service. Ragmarg, but he is not as easily accessible to mental speculators. To those striving for self-realization by severe austerities and penances, or to those who consider the body the same as the self. Ateva Gopi Baba Kore Angikar Ratri Dina Chinte Radha Krishnara Bihar. Therefore one should accept the mood of the gopis in their service. In such a transcendental mood one should always think of the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Siddhadehe Chinti Kore Tahai Sevan Saki Bhave Pai Radha Krishnara Charan. After thinking of Radha and Krishna and their pastimes for a long time, and after getting completely free from material contamination, one is transferred to the spiritual world. There, the devotee attains an opportunity to serve Radha and Krishna as one of the gopis. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that the word Siddhadeho, perfected spiritual body, refers to a body beyond the material gross body composed of 5 elements and the subtle astral body composed of mind, intelligence, and false ego. In other words, one attains a completely spiritual body fit to render service to the transcendental couple Radha and Krishna, Sarvo Padi Vinir Muktam Tat Parat Vena Nirmalam. Gopi Anugatya Bina Aishwarya Jnane Bajileho Nahipai Brajendra Nandane. Unless one follows in the footsteps of the gopis, one cannot attain the service of the lotus feet of Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj. If one is overcome by knowledge of the Lord's opulence, he cannot attain the Lord's lotus feet, even though he may be engaged in devotional service. So, Guru Maharaj used the term, thrown down to Vaikuntha. You can't get worship of Radha and Krishna through the Aishvarya Gyan, or knowledge, reverence, majesty. That is the mood of Vaikuntha. It's not the mood of Vrindavan. Tahate Drishtanta Lakmi Korila Bhajan Tatapina Paila Braje Brajendra Nandan. The unspoken example in this connection is the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, who worshipped Lord Krishna in order to attain his pastimes in Vrindavan, but due to her opulent lifestyle, we could also say her conception, which is Aishwarya Gan, but due to her opulent lifestyle, she could not attain the service of Krishna in Vrindavan. Due to her conception of opulence, she could not attain Krishna. Nayam Shriyonga Nitanta Rate Prasada Svaryoshitam Nalina Ganda Rucham Kutonya Rasotsavesha Bhujadanda Grihita Kanta Labda Shisham Ya Uragad Vraja Sundarinam. When Sri Krishna was dancing with the gopis in the Rasa-lila, the gopis were embraced around the neck by the Lord's arms. This favor was never bestowed upon the goddess of fortune or the other consorts in the spiritual world. nor was such a thing ever imagined by the most beautiful girls in the heavenly planets, girls whose bodily luster and aroma resemble the beauty and fragrance of lotus flowers. And what to speak of worldly women who may be very, very beautiful according to material estimation. Eta shuni prabhu tare koil alingan, duijane galagale korena krandan. After hearing this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Ramananda Raya, and both of them, embracing shoulder to shoulder, began to cry. E mata prema veshe ratri ganaila, pratakale nija nija karye duhegela. The entire night was passed in this way, in ecstatic love of God. In the morning they both departed to tend to their respective duties. Vidaya samaye prabhur charane doriya, Ramananda Roy kohe vinate koriya. Before departing from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramananda Roy fell to the ground and caught hold of the Lord's lotus feet. He then spoke submissively as follows. Mure kripa korite tomar iha agaman, dinadasha rohe shoda mora dushtaman. Sri Ramananda Roy said, you have come here just to show me your causeless mercy. Therefore stay here for at least 10 days and purify my polluted mind. Toma bina anyanahi jiva udarite, toma bina anyanahi Krishna premadite. But for you there is no one who can deliver all the living entities. For you alone can deliver love of Krishna. Prabhu kohe ailana shune tomara gun, Krishna kata shune shuda koraite man. The Lord replied, having heard about your good qualities, I have come here. I have come to hear about Krishna from you and thus purify my mind. Jaichi Shunilun, Taiche, Dekilun, Tomara Mahima, Radha Krishna, Prema Rasa, Gyanera Tumi Sima. Now that I have actually seen your glories, what I heard about you is confirmed. As far as the pastimes of Radha and Krishna in a loving mood are concerned, you are the limit of knowledge. Dashadiner Kakata Javad Amijiba Tabat Tomara Sangha Charite Nariva. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, to say nothing of 10 days, as long as I live, I shall find it impossible to give up your company. Nila Chale Tumi Ami Takiba Eksange Suke Gunaiba Kala Krishna Katarange. You and I shall remain together at Jagannath Puri. We shall pass our time together in joy, talking about Krishna and his pastimes. Eta bole duhe nija karya gela sanja kale rai puna asya milila. In this way, they both departed to perform their respective duties. Then in the evening, Ramananda Roy returned to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So tomorrow we'll continue. Okay. Tomorrow I'll also try to, I was reading more today. I'll try to finish this chapter before I leave tomorrow. Huh? Huh? No tanto. 313, ¿no? Or algo así. No, 13. Tengo como 70 versos para terminar. Yo puedo hacer eso. I can do that. Tomorrow I can finish the chapter. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Janardan Nama Janavaya Manavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopa Govinda Ram Shimari Sunan Giridani Gopinatha Marana Mohan Pinatha Marana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Advaita Chandra Janardan Shiva Sari Gora Bhaktivedanta Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhakta Raguna Rupa Sanatam Bhakta Raguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhakta Dasa Raguna Jai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jai Te Vignana Shavista Puran Jai Gosai Jarmui Taradan Jai Gosai Jarmui Taradan Kansabar Pada Renu Mora Panchagram Kansabar Pada Renu Tahare Charana Sevi Bhakta Saniban Janame more abila Jai Gosai Jabe Raja Koilaban Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Praka Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Manjai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriya Hare Nam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamudha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Haribo. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Varanga Gandharvika Giridhari Juki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Srila Bhakti Tila Miri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Srila Bhakti Nirmala Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Brahmansa Paravajaka Charyastatara Sadashi Shriman Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Brahmansa Paravajaka Charyastatara Sadashi Shriman Srila Bhakti Raka Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Sunanda Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupananga Guru Bharata Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhattadash Raghunath Shadgo Swami Prabhu Ki Jai. Prinzigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Vidyanagar Shri Bhakti Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupad Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Prabhupad Ki Jai. Janardan Srila Ramananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Sripad Srila Bhakti Ashram Maharaj Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Shri Srila Krishna Gopi Godavari Shyam Godavari Samaveda Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai.
Jai Om Vishnu Pad Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj Ki Jai.